So this is a topic I've been wanting to make a video about for the past probably about a year or so. I've just never really sort of collected enough of my thoughts together to sort of make it like a coherent video, but I figured, hey, well, it's the flanker's turn to be featured here on my channel, and this is something that does affect this plane quite significantly, so I figured, you know what, screw it, we'll just do it. We'll talk about it, and of course the issue we're talking about here is the team balancing in air sim, specifically at top tier. Real quick, I'm just going to explain exactly what I'm talking about here. When you have an RB match, people have markers above their head, so you can kind of have like mixed teams. You can have America versus America, you can have Germany versus Germany. Everyone's in the same aircraft. It doesn't really matter because the markers kind of tell you who's friendly, who's on your team and who isn't, right? Now sim doesn't have any of these markers, so what you actually end up relying on to identify if the guy that you're looking at is on your team or not is either radar, but that can be kind of finicky in a lot of situations, or you look at the actual like shape of the plane. Now, if everyone's flying in the same plane, i.e. the two of the same nations are facing each other, how the hell are you supposed to tell who's on whose side? And it can get very confusing very quickly. The way Sim sort of deals with this is that you have this like sort of discount NATO versus Warsaw Pact set up, at least at the top tier. Obviously in props is Axis versus Allies, and the way this works is you have nations like America, Britain and Israel always facing Russia, Germany and China, and then the remaining nations can kind of hop on either side depending on like what the lobby set up like. Now the whole problem that lies here is that this sort of started becoming an issue about 2 years ago, I would say, when Gaijin added the F-14A. Now the F-14A, obviously hugely popular aircraft, everyone's dad knows what the F-14 Tomcat is because of Top Gun and all that, and everyone wanted to play it. So what ended up happening is, in Sim, everybody moved to the American side. Nobody wanted to play red side. Now, the MLD back then, I think was, it still is a very capable aircraft to go up against something like an F-14, so it wasn't necessarily like a balancing issue. It's just, when you're playing on the red sides, and you're, it doesn't matter how good you are, if you're outnumbered 3-1, 4-1, it's not going to be a very good time for you. And this is kind of what the problem was. So what ended up happening is you'd have these stacked ass blue teams running out the red side teams very quickly, and it would quickly end up being in like, you'd end up being in like a 10v2 situation kind of thing, where everyone on the blue team is kind of trying to find people, competing for kills, not really finding a lot of action. It just ends up being quite boring, and everyone on the red team was obviously just either bombing on like the map border, or they're going up against what feels like the entire world. Then you get into this situation where people in the server browser don't even want to join the match because they don't want to fight 10 people as well, and the blue side guys can't join the match either because the team balancing thing just won't let them, right? Because it's already too imbalanced. So you won't find any games at all, or very few games, and then those games would be quite boring because if there's no one to sort of fight. And if you're playing red team, you have the choice of like all the lobbies in the world, but every single one of them you're outnumbered like 3-1, 4-1, that kind of thing. In other words, not a very fun situation for either side. Now the reason I bring this up is because currently, ever since the new Seek and Destroy update, which came out about 2 weeks ago now, top tier Sim seems to be in a very similar situation. Blue teams are absolutely stacked, while red teams are currently falling apart faster than you can say Alexei Navalny. Now, as opposed to what happened with the F-14A early about 2 years ago now, this isn't a popularity thing, this is actually a balance thing. Now, I know America's the most played nation in the game, but Russia's also the second most played nation in the game, right? And I don't think it's 4-1. Also, anyone with a vague interest in fighter planes, like I'm sure most people that play War Thunder have, the Flanker's also a very popular aircraft just because it's so damn beautiful. The main problem here is that with the way things currently are, is that the F-15 and the F-16 are just so far superior to anything that the red team has to offer on their side. Now if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself like, hey, well, Mr. Nimbal, that's just like your subjective opinion, man, because I died to R-27 ETs all the time, then I mean, okay, fair enough, but all we really need to do here is look at the difference between the AIM-120A and the R-77. I mean, the two missiles in terms of range or performance just aren't even comparable. I would say the AMRAAM has about double the range of the R-77. And if you climb in the flanker, you go anywhere above 20,000 feet and you get spotted by an F-15, there's just not, I mean, you might as well just turn around and go home at that point, right? If you see each other at the same time, dude, just give up, bro. The ER also isn't going to save you at this point, because obviously it's a Fox 1 missile and the other dude can just sort of go cold and run away from it. And I know the ET is also a thing, but if the person sees the ET flying towards them, it doesn't have any IR CCM or whatever, so generally 1 or 2 flares is going to divert that thing, and it's just not that great to, you know, for like an aggressive playstyle or anything, just because it is so easily defeated. So then you might decide, well, okay, if I can't outrange them, then I'm just going to sort of try and sneak around and get in close and, you know, launch the R77 that way. After all, it is also a little bit more maneuverable than the AMRAAM. Well, because you also need to actually pick the person up on radar in order for the R77 to even start tracking, in order to even be able to fire the thing, you'll quickly realize that the radar on the new Su-27 SM is the exact same dogshit radar that the old flanker has, and by that I mean it takes about half an hour for it to even pick anything up, so you get into a lot of these situations where you are just staring at the enemy, staring at that dot, you visually see him, but you just need to wait for the radar to complete its scan and then hope that the scan that does actually pass the area of the sky where your opponent is sitting in actually picks them up as well. And then in a lot of cases you also need to wait for the scan to happen twice, because the first scan on the Russian radars doesn't give you the informational direction that the rest of the scans give you, and then that can also kind of mess with the TWS sometimes. If you're lucky it won't, if you're unlucky it will, kind of thing. So if you then wait for a second scan, that's extra 16 seconds, and if you get really unlucky and one of those scans doesn't pick up the target and you have to wait for a third one, then that's now 24 seconds that you're waiting for your radar to pick up a thing that you can already visually identify with, you know, yourself. You do also get the ACM bore sight mode thing, you get the helmet mounted sight thing as well with the radar, but that only goes up to about 6 miles, which I think is just under 10 kilometers. So it's not really that far for like BVR range. Generally, if you're within 10 kilometers, there's already a missile coming towards you, and you should already think about like defending that. It's just, like, on paper, technically, if you do everything perfectly right, like, it is workable, but try doing that in a heated environment where you are already outnumbered, by the way, and you have multiple missiles coming towards you. It just, there's a lot to sort of focus on. The workload in this plane, when the flanker specifically, is just so much higher than it is on any of the western planes, and this is why I think like the average person that plays the flanker or the red side in general here is, you know, it's really suffering right now, because the workload is just so incredibly high and they don't really know what's going on. I mean, War Thunder is pretty bad, I would say, at explaining how to actually play the game to a lot of people, like to the average person, right? Not everyone, you know, lives, sweats and breathes this game like I do. It's sort of, you have to go with this assumption that most people don't really know exactly what they're doing. I mean, this is a pretty complicated game, and I mean, if you want a really good example of someone like this, I really urge you to watch a Captain Toastman video. Now, he's generally like a prop main. He likes his early jets, he likes that old school dogfighting stuff. He's not really too savvy with the new radar systems that like all of the new jets have, and like the way the missiles work and stuff like that. So a lot of the time when you watch his videos and he fires off a missile at like 10 kilometers in rear aspect and the missile doesn't hit, you know, there's a lot of times where he just doesn't understand why, and it's, well, it's, you know, it's because missiles just don't travel that far. I know the thing on the radar said it was within range, but everyone who sort of sweats this game out like I do knows that that range indicator isn't 100% accurate a lot of the time. And then there's also stuff like altitude to contend with, and then, you know, there's different radar modes and stuff like that, and this is all stuff that like the average person just isn't going to you know, be that savvy with and know how to use in the right situation. So, and I think Captain Toastman's videos actually give you a really good insight into, you know, what the game is like, or at least what top tier is like, through the eyes of someone that doesn't sweat it out 24/7. And now that I've said that, the next time he ends up shooting me down in a sim match, my Discord is going to definitely make sure that I'm never going to hear the end of it. Now, the whole like point I'm trying to make here is that when you fly red side, you have to be experienced, you have to know what you're doing, otherwise nothing's really going to happen. The plane doesn't really do any of the work for you unless you get to the merge, but getting to the merge now is a lot more difficult because of the addition of Fox 3 missiles, and people are playing at high altitude a lot more now. Obviously multipathing's been reduced as well, which, by the way, I think is a good change, but obviously there's no denying in this kind of situation, it does exaggerate the problem a little bit more, the imbalance that we have currently. And in turn, it's just a lot easier for these people to sit up at 20-30,000 feet and just lob AMRAAMs down at people, because the R-77 won't even be able to get close to them, right? This is why the flanker is sort of forced to fly low in most situations, because if you're high up and you see an F-16 spots you from like 30 miles away, well, you know, what the hell are you gonna do, bro? And if so, I swear to God, someone in the comments is just gonna be like, well, you just have to like notch and deploy chaff and stuff. Like, yes, I know, but like every argument that I've heard about, you know, like defeating AMRAAMs can also be applied to defeating R-77s. There's nothing at the moment, at least in the BVR context, that the flanker does better or even like remotely as good as any of the American planes. And I know there's going to be people that say like, well, that's realistic, bro. Well, that's fine, but it's also realistic that the Americans can't find anyone to fight, and that American fighter pilots nowadays don't actually shoot anything down except for a fucking balloon, because nobody wants to go up against them. And this is also realistic in War Thunder right now, because when you play American, you can't find any matches, right? There's nobody to shoot at. So if you're happy with that, then you want to, you know, be bored and fly around and just bomb bases for the rest of your life, then fair enough. But if you don't and you actually want action, we need to buff red side. And my proposed change for this is the obvious one. Give the Russian or the flankers a missile that is comparable to the A model AMRAAM. Something like, I mean, I have no clue what the real life performance is on the R-77-1, but maybe that could like be a thing. But if the R-77-1 is still too powerful for what we currently have in the game, then fine. I mean, you know, we also have the PR-12 in the game and the AAM-4 that are nerfed to hell, because they would probably be a little bit too powerful for what it is right now. The Gaijin decided to nerf them and make them a lot worse than the current AMRAAM we even have in the game right now, which still doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, just make it at least as good as the AMRAAM. Why do you need to make it worse, right? I just don't get it. But that's the point. I mean, just add something. We don't need like an R-27 ER versus the AIM-7F kind of situation that we need to. It's just Red Team just needs something that, you know, is like kinematically even on the same page as the AMRAAM, right? Because with the way it is right now, it's like if you want to play on the red side, you are guaranteed to have to play about 3 times as hard in order to achieve the same result as if you were to play on blue side. And if this continues the way it is, I'm telling you, man, that the game mode, at least at top tier, is going to die a soft death in the next like month or two, right? It simply can't save the way it is right now. Right now, we still have a little bit of the patch hype, and patch hype's probably going to last a little bit longer than it is for other patches, just because, you know, this new weapon system has been put into the game and multi-pathing and stuff, and it's like a new way to play. But eventually, the hype is going to die down, and if this is still the same as it is right now in terms of balance, when the hype drops down, this game mode is going to drop like a rock, basically. So the problem with this topic here is that the community is going to get very split, and it's kind of controversial to talk about what team's better, blah blah blah, because not everyone has both sides, right? Because it takes so long to get through these tech trees in War Thunder, you can't exactly just like hop into the other guy's plane for a quick match and just try it out yourself. It doesn't work like that. It takes like months of grinding through these tech trees in a lot of cases, and people just don't have that much time, so they pick 1 or 2 nations and kind of stick with them. Having said that though, you can still look at the different win rates, and they'll give you a really good indication of like if one team's overperforming over the other. That's generally like probably the best way to actually have like a subjective view on it. Recently someone actually pointed out to me that my win rate in the new flanker is basically 0. I have over 100 kills, seriously, I have over 100 kills on this thing, and I haven't won a single match yet I've played in it. But anyway, in summary, how do you make the flanker work as much as you can? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're on one of the 3 maps that I'm on the list here, and that is Afghanistan, probably your best option, Vietnam, and then Spain. These are the 3 maps with the most terrain on. You can try Rocky Canyon, but I personally haven't really tried that one yet, and I can't imagine it being too good. Any of the more flat maps like Denmark, Sinai, Smolensk, you know, like even the smaller ones, Tunisia, Maginot Line, stuff like that, just stay away from them, because you're going to get found immediately. And really, terrain and hiding and the enemy not knowing where you are, it really is your greatest weapon in this plane. And the one thing you can do, especially on Afghanistan here, you saw this like a little bit in the videos, I'm mainly staying in the mountain ranges, just also in front of their spawn a little bit cheeky, I know, but still. just you use the ET to sort of get them as they're flying by, kind of thing, right? You can even take an ER or two as well, just for the like rear aspect shots as well, if you really want to. However, that means you are going to have to cycle through 4 different weapon groups now, which can be a little bit confusing, but that's just something you're going to have to decide for yourself. Also, keep your radar off as much as possible. Use the IRST system. It's not really that overpowered in Sim as a lot of people think, but at least it doesn't emit any radar waves, and you might as well have it on and off, right? You don't lose anything from it. Really only use your radar to sort of identify stuff as well. Anyway, that was the end of that match there. The clips weren't in order, by the way, so if you got confused by like the scoreboard at the top, but our final score was 26-2, which is one of those kills, one of those deaths was a team kill, by the way. But yeah, this isn't a regular score you're going to get in the flanker. This was like the one good game I actually had in this thing in my time playing it. Like I said, it's just, yeah, I thought it'd be like fun footage to watch or whatever. But generally, you are going to have a pretty tough time in this plane, especially if the people on the other team actually kind of know what they're doing and they know how to use, you know, that they're not average Joe, kind of, if you know what I mean. But yeah, other than that, guys, I'm sure I'll get a bunch of lovely comments on this video. And yeah, let me know your thoughts if you agree. What's been your experience on playing the Red Sign and Sim right now at top tier? And yeah, if you're looking for a sim-orientated Discord server to join, obviously my one is in the description. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Cheers.